Trump's Department of Justice shut down an investigation into Tom Homan, according to multiple people familiar with the probe and internal documents reviewed by MSNBC. In an undercover operation last year, the FBI recorded Homan, now the White House border czar, accepting $50,000 in cash after indicating he would help agents who were posing as business executives win government contracts in a second Trump term. It's unclear what reasons FBI and DOJ officials gave for shutting down the probe, but a Trump DOJ appointee called the case a deep state probe earlier this year, and no further investigative steps were taken.
Tom Homan was in the middle of being busted for taking a $50,000 bribe. That was right before Donald Trump got back into office at the end of last year. And this Department of Justice said deep state. So the big story now is that they dropped this ongoing investigation into the border czar, who keeps going on TV to talk about how hell-bent he is on trying to eliminate and deport as many people as possible. Tom Homan got $50,000. What a cheap little bitch. That's all, $50,000, that's all he needs? Well, that was maybe just that one time when he got that sack of cash. I'm gonna let this investigative reporter from MSNBC talk further about the details.
In the summer of 2024, when Trump was running for office and Tom Homan was at his side on many a campaign trail event and basically publicly touting that he was going to be an important part of the president's border initiatives and in the administration, during that time, the FBI began hearing from the subject of another investigation that Tom Homan was soliciting bribes and doing so in exchange for promises that he would eventually be in the administration and be able to deliver and influence federal contracts to help those businesses that paid him. Now, what the FBI decided to do was have a series of undercover agents approach that intermediary and also approach Tom Homan. And our sources and an internal document that we reviewed show that the FBI recorded him receiving this money in September 20th in a meeting they arranged. This is all before Trump is president, but it is really interesting because they didn't go after Tom Homan. They happened to learn from another investigation that Tom Homan apparently had this scheme of making money by offering this.
Tom Homan was prepping himself. I remember when they were running and it was around September, October, and Tom Homan kept popping up talking about his mass deportation plan, how he works hand in glove with the president. He was at those events, as she pointed out. He was right next to him at these things. He was basically already named to be this border deportation czar. So he was trying to get paid. He's like, listen, if and when this happens, we're going to get paid. So like, I need you guys to start, costing me a couple dollars here because I'm going to be the one to hand out these contracts to you all, and whether or not you can make money off of our, trafficking system, because what Donald Trump and this administration is good at is endorsing human trafficking, specifically of young minor girls. But the White House and those folks did also respond.
The White House very quickly got back to us about this today. Kudos to them for that. And also Kaj Patel and Todd Blanche, the acting Deputy Attorney General, all issued statements to us in which they told MSNBC essentially that this was an improper investigation begun during President Biden's term, and that it was an attempt to go after a Trump ally, and they shuttered the case because they viewed it as lacking sufficient evidence to proceed. Of course, that is not at all how the FBI agents or the prosecutors working on this case viewed it.
And that's how figurehead puppet leadership works. This is from even like BLS stuff, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, to the FBI, to the Department of Justice. All these figureheads like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, there's still folks who work in these agencies. And, even though they've pretty much cleared out all the honest ones, there's still some folks left who would talk about what is it they were working on and how it's actually a full and robust investigation. But, leave the figureheads to then go say, this is nothing. I mean, this was just frivolous. There was nothing there. Oddly, the exact opposite of what is that happened when Trump just fired this U.S. attorney from Virginia that found nothing that he could have to come after Letitia James. And so he fired his ass to make sure he can send in a lackey to do it instead. In this case, the folks were we're pursuing Tom Homan. And they put in figureheads to then say, no, all the things that they found that they've been pursuing is null and void. It's deep state. But this next question answer was exactly my next thought, in case you guys had it as well, too. Why didn't that Biden DOJ then finish their their investigation and arrest his ass when they saw him getting handed a bag of $50,000?
The FBI and DOJ prosecutors took no further steps in late 2024. Why is that?
When Tom Homan is allegedly making a promise and recorded accepting $50,000 in cash for this alleged promise, he is not a public official. So he cannot be charged with a strict bribery crime, which is normally what you would charge someone with if they were offering to help influence contracts in office in exchange for money. So what the FBI and the Justice Department decide to do is to continue to monitor him. As soon as he is named as a likely appointee, he's a public official by dint of the statute. So they decide they're going to watch him for a while and figure out, does he deliver? Does he try to deliver on the promise? Does he ask for more money when he's a public official? Then they could charge him with bribery instead of conspiracy or fraud or conspiracy to commit bribery. They decide they should just continue their investigation. But the word stalled is so important that you mentioned, because when Trump is elected president, he names Homan as his border czar. By the way, a position that doesn't require a Senate background check or an FBI background check. And immediately the appointees of Donald Trump are very sour on this investigation when they get into DOJ and into the FBI and are not interested in it being pursued. And it is closed, we're told by sources, in very recent weeks.
What was getting laid out, and the biggest mistake that the previous Department of Justice made was they would have assumed that they would have continued that investigation to get the full and honestly more serious charge of bribery, because he would have fulfilled those promises. He just got the $50,000 in cash first, and he was waiting for his moment. When the moment came, there was a corrupt DOJ in place that said, no more, nothing to see here. Let's cover it up. I'm going to keep letting you guys know. Similarly to the same way that they did when they came into power and saw all of the things surrounding the Epstein case. And they said, nothing to see here. Forget everything that was happening before. We're here to cover up crimes. Only people that need crimes covered up are criminals. Last I checked. You don't need to just shut down things and not really say the reason why unless you're covering for a criminal. So who knows to what degree Tom Homan came through on his promises. But at the time when they were trying to follow him, there was a lot of signals that he was going to be named in this position, which is probably part of his sales pitch to many of these folks who gave him $50,000 to his cheap ass.
Do you already have like plans, proposals ready to go if you get elected? You start the deportation process. You start sealing off the border and doing executive orders, whatever it takes, whatever's within your power.
Done.
It's already done, ready to go.
You've seen Tom Homan. He's coming on board. They're all coming. The whole group is coming on board. Brandon Judd. These are all guys.
He was ready to name him right away. You got Tom Homan. He's going to be coming on. That's a pretty clear endorsement that you can, use your position where you've been walking around with him on these campaign trails, talking about the number one issue that you want to have, which is this deportation policy, to then make money off of. Which, by the way, as soon as this guy was in office, you guys remember it? He named him immediately.
But we got to tell you about big news from overnight. A Fox News alert. President-elect Trump's new cabinet is starting to take shape because overnight, while you were sleeping, he tapped Tom Homan to be his border czar.
Trump saying, quote, there is nobody better at policing and controlling our borders. Likewise, Tom Homan will be in charge of all deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin.
He worked with the president to come up with this job description, so let's hear from him.
He worked with the president to come up with this job description. This sumbitch took $50,000 with his cheap ass. Came up with the position that Trump was going to give him to then carry out his bribery scheme to then give these folks whatever kind of government contracts that we're paying for to then screw things up. Because as we know, in every aspect and every level of this administration and this now government, they don't do anything right. they don't know how to do anything. They got rid of the people that know how to do things because those folks that know how to do things, when I'm not going to be part of any corruption, or I'm not going to do that. They fire them when they reject it, or those folks resigned once they saw the regime that was coming into place. And you're left with fools. So I'm going to show you exactly what some of these fools have done. This is why it's also important. I want you to look at the numbers that are behind these types of contracts that were given. And I'm not sure if this one directly is connected to Tom Homan's $50,000 with his cheap ass. Not sure, or how many others he also worked out behind the scenes. But I feel like not enough people heard about this story. I saw this from back in August. This is from late August this story came out. Did you guys hear about this? When Trump's administration last month, so that would have been July, awarded a contract worth up to $1.2 billion to build and operate what it says will become the nation's largest immigration detention complex, it didn't turn to a large government contractor or even a firm that specializes in private prisons. Instead, it handed the project to a military base to Acquisition Logistics, LLC, a small business that has no listed experience running a correction facility and never won a federal contract worth more than $16 million. This one is for $1.2 billion. The company also lacks a functioning website and lists its address as a modest home in suburban Virginia owned by a 77-year-old retired Navy flight officer. The mystery over the award only deepened last week as the new facility began to accept its first detainees. The Pentagon has refused to release the contract or explain why it selected Acquisition Logistics over a dozen other bidders to build the massive tent camp in Fort Bliss in West Texas. At least one other competitor has filed a complaint. First of all, there's a lot more to this, but pause on the complaints from the other competitors. Other competitors, let's not try and paint them in some kind of good light. These are all private prison organizations, corporations that are paid to imprison and enslave people. And in this case, they said, this is easy money for us. These are brown folks that we've told enough Americans that they should hate, and therefore, pay us $1.2 billion to build one prison camp with tents in the middle of Texas when the temperatures in the summertime are well over 100 degrees. But, we got some money to make off the backs of Americans who are way too stupid and bigoted to figure out what it is that's happening. By the way, here's an image of that, of the company headquarters, the one that got a $1.2 billion detention center contract. Look at that fabulous corporation. I think it's kind of clear the vast level of corruption going on here. Whoever it is that got the $1.2 billion contract, that, I don't know, maybe they handed Tom Homan $51,000 in a large bag. Who knows? Maybe they put it in a nice suitcase and had it all folded up better so that his ass could count it easier. But that's the headquarters. Here's more from this same story. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved using Fort Bliss for the new detention center, and the administration has hopes to build more at other bases. A spokesperson for the Army declined to discuss its deal with Acquisition Logistics or reveal details about the camp's construction, citing the litigation over the company's qualifications. They're great qualifications. The Department of Homeland Security, which includes U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, declined. This is the third time we've talked about how they declined to talk about anything. So don't buy anything that they say about being some kind of transparent administration, the most transparent in history. They've declined 3 times about what was going on in this situation. Continuing, they declined for 3 weeks to answer questions about the detention camp it oversees. After this story was published on Thursday, the department spokeswoman, Tricia McLaughlin, issued a statement that said, under President Trump's leadership, we're working at turbo speed on cost-effective and innovative ways to deliver on the American people's mandate for mass deportations of criminal, illegal aliens. You see how they keep going back to the racism that they, helped facilitate throughout the country? Well, you guys gave us the blank check to be absolute rabid racists and use your money to do it. So please get off my back. You guys are the racists, right, MAGA? So stop being mad at libs and leftists for calling you guys racist when the people that you're following keep saying that you're racist. When the president that you're following just last week said, smart people are the ones that don't like me. He's calling you f***ing idiots. Here's the last level of this idiocy for this particular story. A June 9th solicitation notice for the Fort Bliss project specified the contractor will be responsible for building and operating the detention center, including providing security and medical care. The document also requires strict secrecy. That's the 4th time. Ordering the contractor inform ICE to respond to any calls from members of Congress or the news media. Other aspect of this story talked about how they have no experience when it comes to security and medical care. So who cares about people's medical conditions? Fuck them, they're gonna die. And also, if any members of Congress with oversight capabilities over how our money's being spent and these government contracts are being handed out, supposed to the contractor to inform ICE about it. And ICE then has to respond to it. ICE, who's also still under the control of people like Tom Homan, who got $50,000 with his cheap ass